Hello and welcome to another episode of Metal Effort. My name is Nehemiah, and today we're going to be looking at this piece of metal, the Trevor LEXK base. He's got three different versions. He's got the base model, he's got the plus model, and he has the CFL model. So the base model is usually just one material. Then you have the plus model, which is usually like a bolster. So it could be like, metal and then carbon fiber or whatever combo he wants to do. But usually it's like two parts. And then it's upgraded to bearings. This is just normal washers. And then the CFL is like all titanium with different variations. So the one we have here is the base model, which is $600 in this current configuration, just so you know what we're dealing with, because with custom knives sometimes there's a lot of things going on. So first thing we want to do is our size comparison. I've got our trusty Spyderco PM2 and Para 3. This is the LEXK version instead of the EXK version. The smaller one is a 2.75 inch blade, where this is a 3.33, 3.34 inch blade. So he's kind of got the small and the medium knives that you can pick from. I do want to show you some other knives to compare it to. I've got the Mastrop Keen here, which is a very similar kind of spear point shape. I've got the WE Knives Deacon, which I've recently reviewed. Now, this is a little bit shorter. This is a 3.25 inch blade, but still very similar shape. This is more drop point than spear point, but still in the same wheelhouse. So just to give you an idea of how big the 3.3 inch, 3.33 inch LEXK here is, I think you've got the measure of it. Just for fun, I've been doing this lately. We'll do a measurement just for nerds that want that. So there you go. We are online. And for nerds that are not in America, there you go. You'll notice there's a lot of handle area here, over 4 inches. So that will be relevant in many different ways. With that out of the way, let's get into our dent, the decent, the excellent, the nitpicks, and the terrible of this piece of metal. First off, in the decent, I want to talk about the blade shape. So I was really high on this with the Keen, and it's no different here. This is just a really, really effective, shape for a knife. You've got flats, you have belly, you have point. It's a robust knife shape. It's practical. I don't really need to go too in-depth on the merits of spear point. If you don't know that this is a good shape by now, welcome to the knife community. Another thing I really like about the blade is just how clean it is. There's not a single thing printed on here anywhere. Almost to the point where it's bad, because usually I do like to see what kind of steel it is, and even that isn't hidden somewhere. It's just completely nude. It is clean as a whistle, and aesthetically I think that's the way to do it. Now, this is a change. Trevor used to put like a different little logo he had. It would be right here, and it would take up a lot of space on the blade, and he has since moved to a much more subtle and I think classy, just Trevor Burger Custom, TBC, little initial on the back side. That is classy as hell. I think that was a very good change. And I'd like to think that people like us, doing knife reviews, maybe drove him to make a change and respond to customer feedback. So good job. I think that's the classy way to do it, and I'm happy to see that it's on this knife. The other aspect of this knife blade that I really enjoy is just how thin the blade stock is. We are looking at a very thin and brisk 0.12, we'll call it, somewhere in there without the tape. So the high grind that this knife has, combined with that really thin blade stock, this is a excellent slicer, cutter, very, 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 very good in that regard. Now, it's so thin to the point that this isn't a universally acceptable blade to be using for more hard use type things. Not that I think this is in danger of like snapping or breaking or anything like that. You don't want to be prying on things regardless of what knife you have. But this is firmly out of the camp of sharpened pry bar. This is much more into the elegant cutting tool category. And the amount I've been using this knife, I've been giving myself as many excuses as possible to use this knife. In the kitchen, I've been using it a lot, going through cardboard, doing paper. It's been performing really, really well, and I basically don't have a complaint on the blade. Next thing I want to talk about is this jimping. Now, this jimping is damn near perfect. Which I'm putting in my decent section and not my excellent section, which I just didn't want to chill out too much in the excellent section. Otherwise, I probably would have put it there. This is fantastic jimping to actually work on the action part of it, and I'll talk more about that later on. But what I like about this is that they continue the jimping all the way down. Because as far as like actually opening the knife, I only need this much jimping really, above my finger. Anything below that, it's not really involved in opening the knife at all. But once it's open, then that's where your thumb naturally wants to sit. And so they have it ride all the way up to where your thumb would naturally want to land anyway. So it's very sharp, but not too sharp. It goes exactly the length that it should be, and it's incredibly effective in every way that we're judging it. The clip on the back is actually really classy as well. So I might actually zoom in for this just a smidge. So there's some very faint milling lines that you can see here. So it's a titanium clip with just a little bit of visual flair put on there. And obviously anodized to match the liner lock on the clip side. So very, very, very classy clip. Ramp is perfect. It makes contact. There's spring to it. It's easy to get in and out of your pocket. It's not super duper deep carry, but it's pretty good. It's definitely not a shallow clip by any means. And I enjoyed the clip, and I feel like it does the job just like I want it to do on this blade. So that's good. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but the base model is running on phosphor bronze washers. So I did take the knife apart. I did lube things up a bit. The washers are pretty thin. I don't think that matters one way or another. But the action, as far as like the opening and the close, I'm going to save for later. But as far as like the practicality of having washers, they are much easier to clean. You don't have to clean them out as often. And, the disassembly and reassembly of this knife went really, really well. So kind of combining this with, ease of service with the washers. And I think, if you're not like a complete nut on like absolute perfect action, I think the phosphor bonds do a really good job and do make the knife more practical depending on the situation you're going into. Now with the decent out of the way, let's jump into the excellent. And I have 4 excellent things to talk about. First thing is how much this knife weighs. I kind of hidden this information from you. So 3.3 inch blade. We are clocking in at 2.62 ounces. So that is incredibly good for weight to blade ratio. How are we getting there? Well, we have a lot of carbon fiber. In fact, this whole side of the knife, this whole scale, is just one solid piece of carbon fiber. So, we have the titanium side on this side, and it's not symmetrical. You don't have it on both sides. It's not a liner lock and a liner. It's just the liner on this side. So not having near as much material, heavy material in the handle is definitely contributing to that really, really, really stellar blade to body weight ratio. I'm telling you guys, even for a medium-sized knife, this disappears in your pocket with weight. I honestly, I kept reaching down in my pocket whenever I was like sitting down or standing up, thinking that the knife must have fallen out of my pocket because I couldn't feel it. It's that light. So, wow. Yeah, for EDC, this particular version really has a lot going for it. Next thing is the fit and finish. For this, I might zoom in a little bit. You might have caught some glimpse at some of these elements. But, so I've got perfect centering on that blade. I've got this backspacer going on. Now, this backspacer is really interesting and visually just got a little bit of splash of color and something that I think is just really, again, classy. Classy is like the word to describe this knife. But you've got, a thinner piece of carbon fiber scale here. You've got the metal part here. Then I think this is just a G10 backspacer. I don't think it's carbon fiber for the backspacer. And then a liner right here, the red one, pressed up against that other scale on the other side. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stacks of material here. And it is perfect. All the seams are tight, even, smooth. I cannot feel or discern any kind of difference in anything on this backspacer. So, man, yeah, you could just instantly tell this was handcrafted with care, and Trevor really took his time with these and did it the right way. So that's good. The screws, are kind of on the smaller side, but everything is tight. I took it apart, put it back together again, and without really having to fiddle or adjust, as soon as I put the knife back together and got the proper tension down, like immediately, it was perfectly centered. So that's just a sign of like immaculate, fit and finish and tight tolerances that, kind of show itself when you really look under the hood and see that everything still goes back together perfectly. And that was definitely the case here, and it deserves its spot in the excellent section. Next thing is the ergonomics, and this is part of why I'm so excited about this knife. One of my viewers actually tipped me off to Trevor's work, and I've been kind of in the hunt for about a month now to get one of the knives, because I don't know if you've seen, but I've recently done a chamois review, and it was the 3-inch, kind of small. And I really like that knife. I like the front flipper. I like the simplicity of the design. It was something that really impressed me, and that's when one of my viewers said, "Hey, have you checked out Trevor's stuff? It's a front flipper. He has really good quality, and it's very similar, kind of in the same vein." And I have to say, that viewer was very right. This is very much screaming to me chamois. And the one biggest thing that I kind of wanted to change on the chamois is that, kind of like a Sebenza, there was a point that comes almost like a finger guard right below the pivot. The point would come to a point here instead of here. And so when you nestle up to that finger guard, you're actually kind of far away from the blade. And that's always been a complaint I've had with, Sebenzas or chamois. And it's not a big deal, and you want to have some kind of finger guard. A lot of people are worried about that. I'm not, stabbing into brick walls or anything like that, so I'm not too worried about falling forward on the blade. And even having said that, having this, lip rise up right here is more than adequate to give me purchase and not fly forward on the blade. I've been using this knife a lot, and that has not been a concern, not one time. But what it does is it gives me control right on where that pivot is. I feel like that's where you want your pinch grip to be, if you can, to give you really, right in the middle of the knife, the most torque, grip, and, control. And so I get to be much closer to the edge of the blade, still feeling comfortable and safe, and it gives me a lot more room on the knife. Look how much room I've got on the back. So I can confidently say, even if you have a bigger hand, the larger XK is not a problem. I think this ergonomically will fit pretty much anyone, and it just perfectly fills the hand. The clip is excellent, fills the hand without having too many hot spots or anything like that. And it sort of contour. I mean, this is definitely flat here, but just the contouring you have here, it's just a subtle thing, but it's comfortable. Your hand rests, and there's not really any other grip than the one grip, which is precisely where it should be. And so the ergonomics are just fantastic. I think, my gold standard is always the Koenig Arius. I think the Koenig Arius is a little bit more contoured and deserves its 10 out of 10 rating. But this is just behind it, and considering, the package, the weight that we're working with on the Trevor Burger knife here, I think it's achieving something that's kind of getting to this like perfect equation of size to weight to ergonomics that, usually when you focus too much on one area, the other areas start to fall away and get less and less good. All right, and save the best for last. Opening this knife is a pleasure. So front flipper, I can do a standard front flip open, no problem. And notice the authority that I can get out of this. And this is phosphor bronze washers, mind you. Phosphor bronze. I can't even imagine what this action would be like on actual bearings. But this is extremely hard and safe. I can do it kind of like light switch. Lighter, I should say, like a flat, flash lighter. What am I saying? A lighter that makes flames go out. A lighter, I guess. Flame lighter, fire lighter, just a lighter. But it works really well. And then after having the knife for a little while, I learned very carefully to open it with my index finger. And there's a very specific way that you can do it. Let's see if I can. Bam! Where you can get the same level of action by doing your like reach around with the finger. And this is really satisfying once you finally get it down. When you first start it, you'll get like maybe 20% of the time you'll figure out how to do it with your index finger. And it's not rolling like this per se. It's more grabbing it right here. Bam, and it gives you the torque and the speed that you need to pop that D10 out. And once you get it down, it is really fun to fidget with. And, between those two things, especially on the Shamwari, my thumb was getting mutilated because I was flipping that knife so much. And it's nice to be able to like give my thumb a break and do like a different take on opening the knife and still have as much satisfaction out of it. So I'm a nerd that cares about the fidget factor, and this like blew me out of the water because again, you don't have a flipper tab getting in the way. I mean, when this is in your pocket, it's perfect. It's great. It's straight. It's got nothing hanging off of it. It's extremely lightweight, really practical size, very comfortable. Man, it's really good. Now, as far as disengaging, because opening is only one of my 3 parts to good action, disengaging is excellent. This is great. So you have a little internal cutout on this side. Usually that cutout is flipped. So like on my Conegarius, you'll have this side is the one that's chamfered to get you in. But on here, they're doing it on this side of the scale. So it works just the same because I can get my thumb in there vertically and still move it over, no problem. There's no lock stick at all. It is smooth as can be. This whole area reminds me a lot of the A2, A4 I had. The Andres, Andre Thorburn, and forget the other Andre. Sorry, I apologize. But that, when it engages and disengages, reminds me very much of that. Of like, it's reliable. It always goes to the same spot. And it's just really easy to disengage it. So for flipping and shutting, this is great. Now, as far as the shutting goes, this is washers, and the blade is so light. Remember, the thin blade stock. So it takes a few jostles. If I'm being super honest with myself, it's 2 or 3 jostles of power. It's not going to free fall in the slightest. However, this knife has a unique element about it to where, because of this front flipper, you've got this elbow that sticks out here, the corner of the knife. And so it perfectly fits to where I can push the knife closed with my index finger, which is exactly where it's going to be anyway. So if I want to kind of close it one-handed in a way that doesn't require me shaking the knife about, I can. And so it doesn't slow down. I could do a normal, let my thumb come up and do it. But it's kind of nice to have 2 different options to open and to close. It's kind of satisfying. So of the 3 elements, I think the closing is the weakest, but I do think it kind of has a trick up its sleeve to kind of help with the fun fidget factor and just the practicality of being able to close it one-handed in very, different situations where I don't have to rely on, gravity to close it. I can just push it closed, and I can do it quietly if I need to, discreetly if I need to, and it's not an issue. This is not a perfect knife, and so we will transition into the nitpicks and talk about some of the things that might hold it back. First thing is, the vast majority of the base models like this in the $600 range are going to be N690, and that is the go-to steel for those guys down in South Africa. Apparently, it's a lot harder for them to get M390 at a reasonable price in smaller quantities. So Trevor still does do M390, but he usually reserves those for the other two class of knives. You know, he's got the Plus and the CKF version. So I'm mostly annoyed because the place I bought this from, the South Africa Custom Knives.com or whatever it is, I think they're in like Louisiana or some Baton Rouge, wherever they are here in America. They, by mistake, posted this knife as a M390 version for $600, and I'd been waiting for that, and so I bought it up. Once I got the knife and I pulled out the birth certificate, it said N690. So I'm kind of frustrated because I don't have a way to actually confirm on, the blade steel itself. I'm going to trust the birth certificate. I contacted them and they just basically said, "Our bad, you can return it," and didn't really give me any other, option for the knife. So I'm keeping it. I think it'd be bad taste for me to review it and then send it back, and I didn't want to send it back and then just not have the knife to review. Who knows how long it'll be before I find the version I actually want, but I was so impressed with the knife that I decided to keep it. So it is what it is. All the other knives that they sold that came from that batch were correctly designated as N690, and all those knives still sold out. So there's definitely enough demand even for N690, which is it's in the VG10 area of knife steel. It's not great, but whatever. It's fine. And I kind of want to get my hands on a N690 knife and really put it through its paces and not just, kind of dismiss the steel out of hand when you have, an entire country of knife makers that are, using N690 for pretty much everything, and it's not like they're not able to cut things. It's not that big of a deal. One small nitpick, and really I'm just mentioning it so that in case it bothers you. This does not bother me, but if you actually measure the scales, at first I thought, well, maybe this is just a optical illusion, but I got an objective tool here that can help me. So this side of the scale where you have the carbon fiber and the titanium, you're looking at 0.176, all right? Then we go over to here to just the carbon fiber. 1.122. So that means these are, in fact, asymmetrical. They are not the same thickness on either side of the knife, which is kind of weird when you think about it. Most knives aren't asymmetrical. If I'm holding the knife, the blade is closer this way than it is that way in my hand. Now, I still have control of the blade, and it's not going to matter, I think, in any way. I can't imagine why that would ever matter, really. One could argue that this side of the scale is not as sturdy or strong as this side of the scale, having that titanium bolster, liner bolstering the integrity of the knife. But then again, I'm not using this knife as my batoning knife, right? Carbon fiber is incredibly strong, and there's whole knives that have only carbon fiber on both sides. So I don't think that should be too much of a concern personally, but I do want to, mention it. Whatever. It's fine. Next nitpick is simply, these are difficult to find. I mean, this kind of leads to my whole problem of, waiting months to finally buy one and then kind of rush through things and end up buying a knife that, isn't the one I wanted. I was under the impression that the base models didn't have M390 at all, but maybe there's an exception, and then it turned out it was mislabeled. Later to find out that he does do M390 from time to time on the base models, but it's an exception. So it's like, I don't know, it's kind of confusing. So there's a lot of different, options, and his books are closed. Getting a knife directly from Trevor is going to be difficult, but he is supplying a couple different stores, online stores, with some models. He's also active on Instagram where he might, post a small batch on Instagram, and it's kind of first come, first serve. So I think it's easier to get than a chamois, but still, I mean, one person making custom knives that are really good are always going to have a hard time with supply. That's just the nature of the beast. So I'll acknowledge it and move on. And then as far as this nitpick, and this is just like a personal preference type of thing, but the action on this is superb, even though it has the bearing or the washers. But I would like a little bit more of a free fall shutty blade. And so I think if you care as much about action as I do, of both open, disengage, and close, the close is a little iffy on this. And so I think the bearing version of these would kind of make this very near perfect in terms of what I'm looking for in a knife. So, obviously those knives will cost more, and that's going to mess with the value of it. It's all a factor, but it's something to note. Another small nitpick is these screws are a little small. I kind of would like a little bit more robust screws. A lot of South African knives just have tiny screws. Like, I kind of get the whole, hey, it's hard for us to get M390 for a reasonable price without buying it in bulk argument, but I don't get there's a great big screws shortage in South Africa argument. I'm pretty sure screws are easy enough to get no matter where you are, and you just got to make that decision. Moving on to the terrible, I really don't have anything terrible for it. Maybe a little bit of disappointment with the store I bought it from, but that's not the knife's fault. That's not Trevor's fault. Yeah, I mean, unless you're looking for like a super hardcore beefy knife, I think that's the only real knock against this. But you know what you're buying, and you know why you're buying it, and you know what you're going to use it for, and it's not going to be batoning chunks of oak with your little carbon fiber EDC blade. For everything else, I think this knife is fantastic. So let's transition that into the conclusion. Conclusion is, should you get one of these knives? Yes, absolutely. I think they're fantastic if it's in your budget and this is your jam to get really nice, high-end, classy EDC knives with great action. I would say unless you really like the idea of phosphor bronze, you're okay with N690, weirdly, or you have a strict budget of $600 or less, then I would strongly encourage you to go with one of the other two models. Either like a bolster type thing or the titanium version that has the bearings, that has M390. I think that really shores up the deficiencies, the minor deficiencies that this particular version of the knife has. But as far as the actual shape and design, among all three knives, they're fantastic. They're very, very, very good. I mean, fit and finish, design, aesthetics, practicality. I mean, it's all striking a chord with me. And this knife so far is the closest thing to what I would consider to be a perfect EDC knife. Now, I have knives that, could give it a run for its money. I think the Deacon has, such a good value behind it. Similar weight, similar blade, action where it's much more drop shutty even. It's beating it in the drop shut and disengage, I would say. Disengage is even. I would say opening is better on this, closing is better on this. But again, this is like a third the cost of Trevor Berger's knife. So if you're looking for high-end, I think this has potential to be the best EDC knife. But I'm going to wait until I'm ready to crown this knife until I actually get one of the other models and confirm my suspicions of the quality and perfection of this knife. Until then, if you can find one, I would say it's definitely worth giving it a shot, and let me know what you think of the knife if you get one, and try not to buy it before I do. I'm making competition to get this knife a lot harder, which is a little weird, but it is what it is. I want you guys to know what's out there and what's good and what's bad, so it's all worth it. That's all I have for you today. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.